Okay guys, you see this? This is the meme. This is me killing the meme. That's the meme's bones crunching in my hand. The meme's family's probably wondering where the meme is. Little do they know, the meme is dead. I have just killed the meme. This meme probably has kids. The meme's kids are probably thinking, oh, where's daddy? Where's daddy? Daddy hasn't been home in a while. Daddy hasn't been-
Daddy's dead.
Okay, this just got dark rather fast, didn't it? Basically, I don't want to see any of these comments, okay? I don't want to see any Logic is biracial comments. Miss me with that. But here we go, guys. Getting into this. This is the review you've all been waiting for. Today, I will be giving my review of Bobby Tarantino 2. And I will be doing this under a track-by-track review format. This will be quite a lengthy video, and I appreciate you watching it the whole way through. Those who watch it the whole way through, you are the best. But there will be timestamps in the description below for each song that I review, so you can skip forward if there's just a certain song you want to hear my opinion on. And of course, at the end, I'll give my overall thoughts on the album and a rating out of 10. So, is Bobby Tarantino 2 good? And is it even better than the first one? This is CDTVProductions, and let's talk about it.
But the question is, what logic are we talking about here? Wait, what do you mean? Well, are we talking about mixtape logic or album logic?
So, this wasn't a song, but it was a perfect intro to the tape in my opinion. Logic always likes to incorporate pop culture things that he likes in his music, and this was a very entertaining skit. Also, it's about Rick and Morty, so my brain just
Fucking expanded.
when I heard it. Yes, I am a fellow intellectual. I enjoyed how he mentioned the differences between album logic and mixtape logic, and it was just a cool skit overall. Nice start.
Think this shit done happen overnight. People think that's how this shit happen, but they never right. Acting like they got it, but they never quite.
This was a decent song to kick off the tape. It was probably my least favourite out of the 3 singles released from it, but it's alright. The first verse is pretty nice, the hook is kinda catchy, but my favourite thing is probably the production on here. The beat kinda makes this sound like a follow-up to Super Mario World, even though it's not related to that track at all. You know, it has that similar vintage video game sound to the main melody of the track. My main issue with this though was the second verse, with Logic, you know, kinda singing and then rapping and then singing. It just drags on for way too long. Like I said, I really don't love this, but it's not terrible, and an okay start to the project.
I was born at the bottom, everything I'm giving now. Tell me who really bad it, bitch, I got it. Not a single person work harder than just wrote a novel, starring in a movie, built another business while you at the...
And moving on to the next track, this is another one where the main highlight is the production. This thing goes incredibly hard, and the 808s are programmed so nicely. Apart from that though, this is probably one of the more forgettable tracks from the album. I know, we're not off to a great start here, but honestly, I don't remember how this track sounds until I listen to it again. I will say, the start of Logic's first verse is very catchy, with him kind of finishing with a rhyming ad-lib on each line, but the rest of the rapping on here is whatever. There's some really weird vocal sections where it sounds like Logic is trying to sound like Travis Scott, and it's just yet another person to add to the list of rappers that Logic has tried to sound like at one point in his career. Now I'm definitely not going to go as far to say Logic isn't original. He definitely is. I'm a huge fan of his music. But I think Anthony Fantano put it best when he said Logic really comes off as a fan of rap music in his own music, you know. There's a lot of rappers that Logic has sounded like at some point in his career. I feel like the beat didn't really go to a great use here for how strong the instrumental itself was. The lyrics were very plain too, even for a turn-up track. This kinda struck me as a bit of filler, honestly.
Hold up, wait a minute, bring it right back. Mix that real with that turn up, call it BoomTrap. I ain't heard no shit like this in so long.
Okay, I promise we're gonna get to the tracks I like soon. I just had an unfortunate start with this album personally, because this this is probably my least favorite track on the album. You're not fooling me. I'm not gonna automatically like a Logic song just because it has a bit of an old school sound. Now don't get me wrong, the beat itself is nice, and I really like the concept of BoomTrap. You know, mixing boom bap with a trap style. It's a nice idea, but my main problem is that this is riddled with filler lyrics. I mean, the first 4 to 8 bars of the song actually hurt me with how meaningless they were, and that pretty much continues through both of the verses. If you're wondering what exactly I mean by filler lyrics, it's when Logic says stuff like, "let me get it like this," or "hold up, let me get it right." Just phrases that he's fond of that don't really contribute to the actual lyrical content. They are just there to fill space. It annoys me because I've noticed him doing this more and more recently. It's one of his biggest lyrical shortcomings in my opinion. He commonly falls back on these phrases. Like, yeah, I'm expecting less lyrical prowess because it's a Bobby Tarantino tape, but I still want something of value, and these really are the only 2 good lines on this track. Oh, and there's more Travis Scott imitation on here, and on top of it being an imitation, it just doesn't sound that good on this song. My favorite thing about this track was probably the concept and the hook. I don't like this track though. Most likely the worst track on the tape for me.
They don't understand, but no matter what happened, you know that can't nothing stop me. I'm on the road, always on time cause my eyes is on my rodeo legs.
As for this song, this is a fantastic recovery from the last track. This song is incredible. It has one of the most infectious hooks across the entire album. I just keep singing that Roleolex line because it's just stuck in my head. He hits just the right notes to make it sound fantastic. This is one of the verses on the album that actually had a nice bit of content too, with Logic responding to the whole situation with Joyner Lucas. If you haven't heard about that by any chance, my 2 videos on their disses at each other will be linked below. But yeah, I was surprised Logic responded to it. But it was a nice enough response where the overall message was that he's gonna ignore Joyner and go about his business. A fantastic track, as this one doesn't really sacrifice lyrics for the sake of being a banger. Not to mention, he spits with some fire and vigor on here. Out of the first 5 tracks, this is the strongest without a doubt in my mind.
Riding around the city with my homies, blowing trees, wavy like the 7 seas, living life. Let me get it right, let me give it a minute to get up in it like a beautiful independent woman that's gonna make you wait.
And Logic continues with this track, which is another incredibly strong outing. This really gives me some young Sinatra Undeniable vibes with the subject matter and that incredibly mellow, warm beat. As you can tell by this breezy instrumental, the 4 minutes and 20-second long runtime of the track, and the Wiz Khalifa feature, this one is all about weed. The good old Mary Jane, the good old ganja, the devil's lettuce, all about smoking the old doobies, you know, the good, the giggle nuggets. It's all about that. I really enjoyed that even though it's quite a laid back song, Logic still came in with some relatively rapid fire flows, but they don't disrupt the calm of the song. It still keeps the mood. I also love the kind of hazy hook on this thing. It's really well suited to the vibe of the track. Not to mention, Wiz Khalifa's feature was pretty damn great. I don't think I hear Wiz use that type of flow often, so it was cool to hear. No one's better suited to a weed track than Wiz, so it was a very suitable feature. Yuck was a brilliant track, and he followed it up with this, which was another brilliant track. One minor criticism though, I almost cringed myself to death when Logic tried to imitate Wiz Khalifa's laugh at the end of the song. My face literally looked like this because the cringe was just contorting my face. It was seriously, my face felt in pain. It was contorting so bad. That was horrible, but it still didn't ruin the track. It's still a fantastic song and one of the best on here.
Oh no, Bobby, don't do him like that. You gon' fuck around and leave him knowing like that. Rat pack the gang, they all on my back. Rat pack the gang, we do it like that. No.
I'd say this is a song that starts off decent and then goes on to become pretty good. It kicks off with this nocturnal style trap beat with Logic lightly singing his bars. It's nice enough, but like I said, it's just decent. But then we move into the second half with a beat switch. Now, I would have liked if there was an actual transition between the 2 beats, but there isn't really. The previous one just stops playing and the next one just starts. It's cool enough though. The second half is pretty good with this really strong switching bass. The 808s just sound incredible here again. It still has the nocturnal sound that the previous beat had, but it picks up the tempo, and Logic does the same with his rapping across the second half. Another thing I noticed lyrically though is that he recycled the Barry Bonds line from 9 to 5. I wouldn't mind it if it was a clever reference to that line or that song, but it doesn't seem like it is, so I didn't like that. It was just a random reusage of a bar, and I never really enjoy recycling from an artist. Also, so much plaque upon my wall, I need a dentist? Just no. Apart from those couple of lyrics not being that great, the rest of this was pretty nice, and it does sound pretty great. If you just want a nighttime banger, then this is that track. Like I said, it's a pretty good track, not an amazing one, but it still continues the strong streak that the album has going at this point.
Tell me what you really know about me right now. Anything I want, I get it somehow. Fuck that trap shit, it's that rap shit. Give me that head like John the Baptist. Ready to rip it a hoof in the catch. It's greatest alive like I'm catch.
And the strong streak of the album peaks here with what is my absolute favorite track on the album. This track is the best on here, no question for me. Honestly, this was a much better BoomTrap style song than the one on this tape that's named after that style. But yeah, I'm sure we all got excited when we saw Logic would be going back to his young Sinatra days on this track, and it didn't disappoint. It genuinely makes me wonder why Logic hasn't revived his young Sinatra series recently. I mean, it's been about 5 years. And even if he's not gonna revive it, it just makes me wonder why he doesn't spit like this often nowadays. He's managed to achieve the sales now, so I just hope on his next album he goes back to rapping well. His flow is impeccable across this whole song, especially the second verse, and it's amazing to hear him rapping this smooth and fluid again. I also think it's cool how during the hook, the drums change up to give it more of a trap vibe, but the melody stays the same. It's kinda like the song slowing down for a minute before it just kicks off again and the weighty boom bap drums start again. This has to be my favorite track on here, like I said. It blended the old school and new age sounds perfectly, and Logic showed us that he still has the young Sinatra version of himself within him. Great stuff here.
Increase the auto tune so y'all can feel the pain. Yeah. Pour that drink up in my gut to catch a vibe. I am way too turned right now, don't need to drive.
But after that run of 4 good tracks in a row, we come back to another forgettable track with Wizard of Oz. Again, the production is amazing here, and the hook definitely has some catchiness to it, but the whole Travis Scott auto-tune thing during the verse really does nothing for me again. And surely you can think of a better line than, "I think I'm the best rapper alive, because they tell me I'm the best rapper alive." There's no wittiness to that line, and the long drawn out way in which it's delivered makes it stand out way more than it should. This one kinda starts off strong, but it completely trails off into mediocrity as the song goes on. It's definitely still listenable, but it's a very short and incredibly forgettable song.
You need HDTVs. Being broke is like an allergy.
Ballin' with my homies now. Everybody know me now, but they don't really know me now. Yeah, this shit.
On this track, 2 Chainz continues his run of killing every guest verse that he has touched recently. Like seriously, he has been impressing me a lot this year. I don't know how he's improved so much, but his flows have been on point on everything recently, and his lyrics have become a bit more clever too. Of course, we have another great beat, and yet again, it's specifically the 808s that sound so nice. Like seriously, Logic is working with some producers that know their way around making 808s sound full and rich. However, unfortunately, my complaints start with Logic's rapping again. You remember what I said about BoomTrap Protocol being packed with filler lyrics? The same thing happens here again. To prove my point, just let me read the first few bars to you without a hard beat behind them, and just tell me how these are good, witty, or even well thought out in any way. Balling with my homies now, everybody know me now, but they don't really know me now. Yeah, this shit is real life. Haters talk shit, but deep down still wonder what it feel like. That's definitely a filler bar, and he's used that real life feel like rhyme scheme before. Yeah, you know I am right. I just signed a $30 million deal. How that feel? Goddamn right. There's nothing behind those bars. There's zero substance. At some points, I feel like Logic is using the fact that this is a Bobby Tarantino tape as an excuse to sacrifice lyrics. Because, I mean, he didn't necessarily do that on the first one. And think about what this track is. It's supposed to be a braggadocious track, not just a mindless banger. It should have clever lyrics about your success, which is what Chainz brought to the table. But Logic didn't. Logic just said, yes, I am successful now, without much creativity in his lines. And he really just said, you're too weak, like 7 times 2. If you break that down, he's literally saying, you're too weak, like 1 week, but times that by 2. Genius, mind-blowing. Chainz outperformed Logic here, honestly. He had stronger wordplay and wittier lines. I will say though, just because I'm criticizing this doesn't mean I think it's awful. I think you need to keep that in mind for all of these tracks. It's still worth listening to, I just wasn't so satisfied with Logic's performance.
Bitch, I'm the one I consistently prove. I stuck to the code like a finishing move. I hit a groove that they can't undo. And over the years, all I did was improve. Down life, toss dice, on my off night. I left it out.
Logic and Big Sean seem to make good music together. Their previous collaboration, All Right, was a brilliant track, and this one is definitely very strong too. Big Sean gives a great performance with a pretty unique flow that he switches up like 8 times across his verse. It was impressive to me, and I'm happy to say, I also loved how Logic performed on this song. He eases into his verse with some laid-back flows initially, but once the drums really kick in, he fires off with some confident aggression, and it probably makes this one of the most hyped up songs on here. I'd definitely be up for more Big Sean and Logic collaboration tracks, because they're 2 for 2 right now. Oh, fuck. Oh, that went down the wrong way.
They say it's my day. La 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 la, yeah. Roll it to the spot.
Now, I have ragged on a lot of other tracks here for their lyrical content, but I'm actually fine with this particular song having very basic lyrics. And my reasoning for that is that this is just intended to be a mainstream track for radio. Songs like BoomTrap Protocol and State of Emergency clearly aren't trying to be radio hits, so that's why their lack of lyricism annoyed me, but I'm perfectly fine with it on this track. This is supposed to have more pop appeal than rap appeal. The hook definitely has quite a motivational feeling to it and an anthemic sound, a sound which Marshmello's production lends itself perfectly to. Now, I'm not really sure what a girl with daddy issues has to do with working hard every day, but whatever, this track is all about being a mainstream hit, and for that style, it's a perfectly fine track. I'm definitely not going to be complaining when I hear this one on the radio.
Ever rip it apart when it start like this, when a heart like this, and a murder rhythm, my yes, I'm in no nitrous, do it righteous. I've been down this road before. Everybody think that they do, but they don't. Swear to God that they whoop.
Kind of an anticlimactic way to end my review, as I've already talked about this track in length, as I did a review on this song when it came out. I still feel the same way I did back then. It's an incredibly strong track. I thought it was very nicely written and some thought was actually put into most of the bars. The only thing I find weird about it is its placement on the mixtape. It feels very weird to have this as the final track. And because it's such a good track, it kind of leaves me wanting more when it's finished, and I feel like it would work better at the start of the album to hype you up for everything that's about to come. Also, just a personal gripe with this is that I don't like hearing the outro track of a project before the project is out. I feel like the outro should always be an album exclusive type thing, because I mean that's the way you're finishing your album, you know, and it does feel slightly anticlimactic if you already know how the outro is gonna sound. But yeah, the song itself is still really, really good. Brilliant song, just a weird choice for the closing track. So, now time to give my overall thoughts and rating about it. So what did I think about this overall? Well, I thought it was an alright project, but it wasn't amazing. I think some people definitely overhyped it to me. I had a lot of people saying to me, oh, every track is fire, but it's not a bad project by any means. I think it's a bit of a shame to see Logic's lyrics taking a bit of a downward spiral between this project and Everybody, but this still definitely was a better project overall than Everybody, of course, in my opinion. I do have to say though that I think I preferred Bobby Tarantino 1. I see a lot of people saying that this is way better than the first one. I'd have to disagree with that. I think the first one was a much better project because I feel like on that one, Logic didn't sacrifice lyrics as much as he did on this project just to make some bangers. And like I said, there are a few filler tracks on here, and some tracks I just flat out don't like. Whereas on the first Bobby Tarantino, the only track I flat out disliked was Deeper Than Money. Also, I'm hoping on Logic's next album, he can make it the whole way through without sounding like someone else, because, let's not lie, the Travis Scott influence was incredibly clear on a few tracks on here. My favourite segment of this album was definitely starting from Yuck and ending on Warm It Up. That's a very strong sequence of songs, the strongest sequence of songs on here in my opinion. I'm gonna give Bobby Tarantino 2 by Logic a 6.7 out of 10. It didn't disappoint me, but I definitely don't think it's a return to form for Logic. And I guess when I heard 44 More, it really set me up to expect that this album would be more focused than it actually turned out to be. Like, this is a fun mixtape, but it's lacking in quite a few areas. Again, not bad though. 6.7 out of 10 is a positive score. It's above 5. So what did you guys think about this project? Let me know in the comments below. Let me know what your favourite tracks were. And let me know if you thought there were any particularly strong sequences on the album, just like how I thought Yuck to Warm It Up was the strongest sequence on the album. Also let me know what you would rate this out of 10. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I appreciate you if you watched it all the way from the start till now. You guys are the best if you do that. And yeah, please subscribe if you haven't done so already. I will see you guys all in the next one. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter under the handle @CDTVProductions. And I'll see you guys all later. This is CDTV Productions, signing out.